Okay, so for this final part of the process, we're going to add a UI element. So we're going to add our name, and then we're also going to add a timer. So I'm going to jump into Unity over here, and we have our character, we have our pillar. Before we do the UI, we're going to do one other thing where we're going to duplicate this. So I'm going to press Control D or Command D if I'm on a Mac, and I'm going to use my Move tool in my scenes view over here to put this up at the top, and I'm going to rotate this. Let me see if I got that right. On the, no, not on the Z-axis or the Y-axis. We're going to rotate it on the X-axis, 180 degrees. I did not type on 180. I did, there we go. There we go. And I'm happy with that. So now if Tommy collides with either of those, we'll be good. You might want to rename those. For the sake of time, I'm not going to. All right, so now what I'm going to do is create a UI element by right-clicking, and going to UI, and then I'm going to choose text. Now that's automatically going to create several other game objects that we'll see in our hierarchy, including a canvas and an event system. The event system we're not really going to worry about, so just ignore it for now. We'll talk about what that is a little bit later. But the canvas, you're going to see, fits weirdly. And so we're going to make some default canvas changes. We're going to change the render mode to screen space, not overlay, but camera. For our 2D orthographic games, we're going to use the camera space, but we have to tell Unity which camera. So we're going to pull the main camera down into the render camera area that's set to none by default. We can keep all of these settings the same. And so now if I double click on my canvas, it is the size of the camera view. And I'm going to go down to the canvas scaler. And I don't want this to be constant. I want to scale with the screen size. And then I should be able to just keep the rest of this the same, scale with screen size. Yeah, we're happy with that. All right, so now I can take my text object, which you see is sort of down here out of the frame. I'm going to pull it up over here, and I'm going to put it on the right-hand side. And you're going to notice a couple settings that we're going to have to change. First off, I'm going to change the color of the text object, or the, what do you call it? I'm going to change the color of the text object. And so I'm going to choose like a white color because I think that'll contrast nicely. And you'll notice that if I change the value of this right here, so I'm going to write, my name. Oops. It doesn't fit really. And so what I'm going to do in order to make it fit is reposition it accordingly. So if you look in the scenes view here, notice that my text box is sort of visible right here. I actually want this to be right aligned because I want it to grow from the right to the left instead of the left to right, because otherwise it might not fit on the scene. Now what I'm going to do is go to my project panel. I'm going to go to my fonts folder. I'm going to go right click, import new asset. I'm going to bring in the PR start font that we had downloaded. So if I go to my downloads folder, assets folder, prstart.tff, I'm going to go ahead and hit import. I now have the ability to use this font. Now, video games, you have to bundle everything together. And so now for my text object, I can go down into my text component and I can change the font property to the value of not Arial, but instead PR Start. Now I get this cool sort of pixel art style, vintage retro design. Now, if I increase my font size, it starts to disappear. That's because the horizontal overflow is set to wrap and the vertical overflow is set to truncate. So I'm actually going to change it to overflow and overflow so that it overflows outside of the text box. Alternatively, I could just use the text box resize option, which is this tool up in here. Either way is going to work. I'm going to go and look at this and say, okay, that looks good with a size 16. I like that. That's great. And then I'm going to name this, not text, because that's not descriptive. I'm just going to double click on this. Single click on this and call it name, like so, just so I know what that thing is. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do to add a timer, I'm going to right click right here on my canvas. I'm going to add another UI text object. And this time, I'm going to basically go through the same process. I'm going to make sure that the font matches so that it's consistent. The font size I used was 16. I'm going to make sure that it is also white so that it's, again, consistent. And I'm going to have this one left aligned because it's going to be up in the top left corner there. And so I'll use my move tool in order to find it. Let me zoom on out here. And here's where it's a good idea to look at the transform. So name is set currently if I look at my transform Y position to 186, I want that to be the same for this thing that is eventually going to become a timer. So vertically, it's in exactly the same spot. And I'm going to have this be a placeholder. It's going to say time, like so, colon 0000 with a little space there. And it doesn't fit. So remember, I have to set my overflow properties, which are right here, horizontal overflow to overflow. And then my vertical overflow, again, to overflow, and it'll all fit and be well and good. So the next thing that I need to do is create a game object that is going to be the manager of the time. And so I'm going to right click, and I'm going to create an empty game object called time. I could call it time manager. I'm just going to call it timer for now. So I have a timer game object. Now I'm going to create a script called timer. I've already done that. So remember, you just right click, create C# script. And I'm going to double click to open this up in Visual Studio. And you can see that right now this is sort of the generic code. In the class Google Slide presentation right here on slide number 54 or thereabouts, I'm going to add in the timer.cs code. We'll talk about what the code does in class, but for now I'm just going to copy it. I can minimize that, and I'm going to replace all of this code with the timer code, and I'm going to go to build. If you're on a Mac, it's going to say build all. If you're on a PC, it'll say build solution. And then I'm looking to not have any errors and get like a build successful thing showing right there. So now I can minimize this, and I'm going to drag the timer script onto the timer game object right here. And so what this is going to do is it's essentially going to create an instance of the timer. And so on my timer game object, you can see, let me make sure that I got it. I missed it. Let me click add component timer. There we go. I've got the transform. I'm going to set the transform of the timer game object to 0, 0. It doesn't really matter, but I just like to keep things tidy. And so sometimes when you drag them into the world space, it gives it a weird location. What I need to do is I need to tell Unity what the score text object is that I want to use, because I want to programmatically control this text object that is the timer. And so I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to call this timer text. And so I could call this anything, but this is just really more for me to pay attention to it when I like to keep things tidy. So let me fix that capital E that got in there. All right, so now I'm going to drag the timer text into the score text right here. I could have also called that score text. Actually, I'm going to call it score text just to keep things, again, clean. All right, so score text. So now in my timer game object, I'm going to drag score text into the score text variable that I created in the script. And so now if I press play, the script is programmatically going to update this text object right here that we will see. And if everything goes as planned, once this stops spinning, it will work. And then I can stop this video and you can get to work. I was really hoping that it would just start working. Oh, and there it goes. Okay, so every second it's going up. And so when I collide, boom, he explodes and the level starts over. You've created your first timer, your first UI game object. Remember to set those canvas settings. You're always going to have to do that this semester. Thank you very much.